Hello and welcome to this 261 Fearless Empowerment Talk. I'm your host today, Juliet McGrattan, and I'd like to introduce you to 261 Fearless if you don't already know us. We are a global women's running network that uses running to unite and empower women all around the world. And we're really passionate about trying to improve the physical and mental well-being of all women. And we know that education is one of the keys to doing that. So we use our global platform to bring you our series of empowerment talks where we speak to a whole range of women, interesting women from positions of leadership, those in positions of influence from the world of business, sport, health, and more. And we love chatting to them because we learn from them, they motivate us, they inspire us, and really they just help us to educate women and use our empowerment talks to reach women all around the world. So today I'm excited to introduce Esther Newman. Our topic and our theme for today is going to be progressing women's running and activating women to run through the media. Now, Esther is the current editor of Women's Running magazine in the UK, and also the co-host of the really wonderful Women's Running podcast with Holly Taylor, which I do recommend that you have a listen to if you haven't already. And I'm just going to read out a little bit of Esther's bio because I think it's really, really perfect. She says that she's passionate about promoting running as just about the best thing there is. Agree with that one. And empowering women to take ownership of their physical and mental well-being. She hated team sports at school, but has always loved slow running and swimming, and thoroughly enjoys being punished at early morning boot camps. Her favourite race distance has crept up now to marathon, but preferably on the trails because that involves more flapjack. So definite agreement with all of that, except maybe the early morning boot camp. But welcome, Esther.
Hi, Juliet.
Thank you so much for joining us. And can I just start by giving you some congratulations on your recent London Marathon?
Oh, thank you so much. Oh my God, that was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. I'm still buzzing. It's been, God, what's it been? It's been sort of 6 weeks or something, hasn't it? And I'm still kind of living the marathon dream. I absolutely loved every minute of it, which I didn't think I'd say. I thought I'd at least hate bits of it, but I didn't. It was incredible. It was brilliant.
Oh,
have you done it?
The London Marathon, I have done it, yes, and it is very hard to beat, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's been my only issue, is kind of what next kind of thing. So
yeah. Oh, I think you said, love-hate relationship with running can sometimes be the story for most runners. What is your relationship with running? How do you feel about it?
Oh God, I absolutely love it, which is useful considering my job. I think I'm like at peace with it now. So I think particularly after taking on the editorship of Women's Running, I felt like I needed to progress my running all the time. I needed to get better or faster or run further or whatever. And in many ways I have done those things. But particularly now that I've done the London Marathon, I feel like I'm at peace with not wanting to constantly seek out those PBs. So I feel like I do it mostly for enjoyment, mostly for me, mostly to get out of the house. It's like punctuation. It's the start of my day. And I just, I love it. And I love finding new little bits about it. Like, for the past, I'm almost 50 now. For the past 30 years, I've considered myself a solitary runner. But actually, in the last year, I've started running occasionally with other people, and it's a joy. So it's those kind of new discoveries about it, which I think, it's not just, it's really weird when you talk to people that don't do running and they're just thinking, well, what, like, A, why do you do it? And B, what is constantly interesting about it? And the discovery of a new route, or the planning, the joy of planning the long run, the night before, getting everything sorted and knowing your route. And I love doing, there's the particular run I like doing where the change of scenery, the change of seasons, all of it is just it's just a total joy. So that's the kind of running I do. I'm not track, I'm not fast. I just I plod along and I love it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you say. I think it changes as you change, doesn't it? And you discover new bits that fit with what you need from running at that time. I'm curious to know how it helps you in your job, other than the fact you write for a running magazine.
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like it should be VAT deductible, it should, it's like, come on guys, I don't, I guess I could do my job without being a runner. I know how to edit magazines, so that's something that I've always been quite passionate about as well, as a sort of as a different thing. But it does help, it really does help, because it gets you into that mindset of understanding why women would choose to run. I mean, I'm not every woman, I'm just me, so I can only kind of speak from my own perspective, but it does give me that sort of insight into how it feels before and after a run. It gives you the insight into injury. It gives you the insight into the emotional highs and lows of and the fluctuations of running. The kind of, if you have injuries, the kind of, the depression that might come when you can't run. That's huge, and it's such a big thing. And it's kind of, most of the questions we get to the brand are asking us about recuperation, recovery, something to do with either injury or kind of something that's stopping women from running. And having first-hand experience of that means that, of course, I have empathy, but of course it means I have the curiosity to try and seek out the answers, and to try and but I think that curiosity has to be widespread as well, because it's finding answers not just obviously for me and for my downfalls, but for everyone. So I mean, I'm speaking to women who run distances and at speeds that are foreign to me, but so exciting to me, and I want to find answers for them as well, for the questions that they have. So that I guess that really, if that's an answer, I'm not sure.
Yeah, absolutely. How long have you been the editor of the magazine now?
I'm not very long. It feels weird. I was going to say like maybe a year, but actually I think it's 4 years. But COVID really crept in the middle there and kind of turned everything on its head. So I joined just at the end of 2018. So I was taken on. So Anthem bought the brand mid 2018, and they sort of carried on with it as normal. So it was owned by another publisher. They bought it. And I came in at the end of the year to redesign it and refresh it and kind of charge up the content a little bit. So yeah.
And why what was it about it that did you feel really passionate that you wanted to have a role in women's running nationally? Is that, or was it just really a practical thing?
Oh God, it came completely out of the blue. It was there was a mutual friend who sort of said, oh, there's this position, they need, in fact they took me on for 6 weeks initially. It was just to help with the rebrand, and then I became the editor. And this I got this sort of text out of the blue saying, are you interested in running, and are you interested in doing this sort of thing? And I was freelance at the time, and I was absolutely overwhelmed. I remember sort of sitting on my bed just going, because it was everything for me. It felt like, I mean, I've worked in publishing since I was 22, 23. So, 6 years of my life now. I have never worked on anything that I have felt deeply passionate about all facets of. I've been passionate about maybe the readership, or I've been passionate about some technical thing that's going on in the brand that I've been working on, but I've never worked on something where everything speaks to me and everything is what I want to do, which is to kind of emphasize the importance of movement for women, and the way in which it's a women's only brand as well. It was just like, I'm an ardent feminist, and this felt absolutely wonderful to me to have all these this kind of Venn diagram of brilliant stuff where I could kind of speak to women, where I could talk about something which I absolutely loved but no one around me understood, which was running, And suddenly I was like, oh, all these people, they're going to understand me. So it was a very selfish move, to be honest. You know, it's like I found my tribe, they already exist. Yeah, it was that, and within the context of media, of magazines, which I love. But also, you know, I knew that, you know, print magazines and stuff, there's a finite kind of, you know, that they are finite. There will be an end to them at some point. People don't consume media in the same way as they used to. But if you're joining a media company these days, there's other branches, you know, like you mentioned, the podcast, so you can kind of develop different ways in which you can speak to women. So yeah, all of it, it's just it's a dream job, absolute dream job.
And I'm interested to know, because I mean, it is a position of influence. I admit that when I first started running, women's running, this was nearly 15 years ago, Women's Running magazine, it was my only connection with, it was my community. I read every page inside out, and it really directed how I trained and what I ate, and so it is a position of influence that you have. What do you see as your role in the nation's women's running, really, if that's not too overwhelming?
that is slightly overwhelming. I do yeah, I do. I think I have also come to grips with the fact that, yeah, and I always think of it as being quite small, because as with many things, you know, I don't get a huge amount of feedback. I get some feedback from our audience. I don't get loads and loads and loads. So sometimes, and sometimes, as is a lot of the case, actually, when you do get feedback, particularly on social media, your feedback tends to be from the same sorts of people, or and sometimes even the same groups of people. So sometimes I think it's easy to forget that there is an influential thing, of like arm to the job. I think it has been sort of slightly overwhelming, but I think I've made my peace with it, and I kind of understand now the things that I need to be doing, and the things I need to look out for in terms of the stuff that we are broadcasting for women to look at, and I think we'll come on to this a bit later on, actually, because there are bits and pieces where I have slipped up in the past, and been sort of brought to task by the readership, and I think, you know, times have changed, fitness has changed, the way in which we speak to women has changed. You know, if we were to pick up women's running from 15 years ago and women's running now, they are vastly different, hugely different. The way in which we as a media talk to women is very, very different. And I'm still having to check that tone of voice. I still have to check the kind of messages that we're giving women. And I feel as though it is a really important thing for me to be doing as editor, to make sure that we sensibly converse with women about how to get fit, how to remain happy with their running. And we do talk about nutrition, and we do talk about strength and fitness and things, but the way in which we talk to women has changed so much, even within the last 4 or 5 years, actually, that as I've been editor, where we are now. You know, we don't talk about weight loss ever. We never talk about thinness as a goal for running. We talk about inclusivity. We want to kind of, the main aim is not to kind of speak to a converted portion of amazing women runners, but to in fact encourage all women to run. All women who can run to run. And that, when I say it out loud, feels like such a huge task. But that is what we want to do. We want to encourage as many women as possible to find the enjoyment in running, I think.
I mean, that sounds very challenging. What do you think the biggest challenges are that you've come up against when it comes to sort of trying to activate women?
Oh God. Well, I think the biggest challenge is that lots of our audience don't understand that it's a challenge. So even within the women's running audience, sort of print, social media and things like that, we send out surveys quite often. And one thing that's really brought me to task recently is in answer to one of our questions on the survey, we asked them, do you feel that we need to do more about diversity in running? And we didn't kind of underline what I meant by diversity. We didn't say race or gender or ability or anything. We just said, should we be doing more, like as a whole, not just Women's Running Brand? And a portion of those people said, no, everything's fine. And it wasn't a huge portion, but it was a portion. And it just made me just think, well, that's bonkers. I don't understand that. And yet, also I know that when we survey these people, there's it's a vast proportion of them, like 95% of them are white and, clustered in kind of the Southeast. But I can see where some of the issue is, that even for someone that feels that they're sort of quite kind of right on, that's into running, if you go through your social feed and you follow the sorts of people that I follow, and follow people that are kind of influential and exciting and brilliant runners and stuff, you wouldn't necessarily consider there to be an issue with diversity and inclusivity because of the echo chamber. Like, so you're sitting there just going, well, we're all in it together. There's loads of women running. There's loads of Black women running. This is brilliant. There's loads of women that look different, that this is fantastic. So it's only when you actually engage with people, and I think this has been it's been massively eye-opening for me, and it is one of our central pillars, is the inclusivity and diversity angle, because you can look at kind of at the press, you can look at your social feeds, you can look at social media and think that everything's all right. But if you speak to someone from Black Girls Do Run or from Black Trail Runners, and you find out their story, and you discover that actually, and if you open your eyes and you look at the start line of races, and you see the lack of women, you see the lack of Black women, and you see the lack of general diversity, you just sort of think, God, what year are we actually in? This is awful. And you realize how much encouragement women need to stand where they're standing. And it kind of makes you realize how much education needs to happen, because I don't think men understand that. And I don't think men understand the bravery that it takes for women to stand on start lines or to even go running in public for the first time. I don't think lots of women feel that either. So it's kind of, there are so many barriers for women to begin running, and I've tried my very best to nudge in slightly, but there's just so much to do. There's so much to do to encourage women who think, well, it's not for me, I can't do that, I wouldn't stand there, I wouldn't, even amazing runners like, Sophie Power at the moment is doing the She Races stuff about encouraging more women to take on like mega big races and stuff, and that's just on the kind of the male female split, really, and that's about kind of making things more accessible for women, making sure there are period products available, making sure that sort of thing. And even that runners like Sophie Power has been, she's been at the start of amazing races, huge 50-mile, 100-mile races, and there's just very few women, because women don't think that they can do it, but they can, but
I can do it well.
Yes, they can do it bloody well, yeah. But I know that's such an easy thing to say, and particularly if your barriers are not just a concern about your ability, barriers to running can be massive, diverse, huge barriers, huge cultural, personal, all sorts of things, and there's a lot out there that we need to address. Sorry, that was very rambly.
No, it's fascinating, and it's really, and like you say, we are very much in our bubbles, and there is so much more to do. And I'm wondering if we can kind of learn from some of the experience you've had in actually communicating with women. And do you have any tips if we are using written word or spoken word about that you found that help to engage women?
Um, I don't. I sort of don't know. I think when I've spoken to Tasha from Black Girls Do Run UK, who is just lovely, but when I've spoken to her before, she was saying that in terms of encouraging, like in this instance, encouraging Black women to run, or to run more, she was honestly just saying, just give us a smile. You know, if you go running and you run past a woman who runs past you, don't do what I can often do, which is head down, I'm too shy to look, but do actually wave and smile, or have a little smile or something, because it can really encourage that person to think, oh, you know, yeah, I think these people are for me. I think this thing is for me. And maybe that's their first run, you see. So it's kind of, it's bearing that in mind. It's like I heard a story that just made me weep, which was a woman who had been heckled while she'd been out running, and it was her first ever run, and she never ran again. And you just think, I get that. I get why you would not think, well, you know what, running sounds rubbish. I don't ever want to do that again. So I think considering that any runner that you meet might be on their first run, and behaving in a lovely way to them, can have a huge effect on encouraging them, I think, to maybe just do the second run. That's all.
Is that something that you've written about or covered in the magazine, how to help and encourage other runners around you, I wonder?
We've touched on it. It hasn't ever been, I don't think, you might know more than me actually on that score, but I've
read most of them, but I can't remember.
I don't think we've made that into we've certainly talked about it on the podcast a bit, because we've talked about how some runners you go past are very much kind of morning, and you might even get a full sentence out of them, you know, and it's I think that really depends on where you live, where you're running.
Yeah,
people are much chattier, much smilier, I find, as soon as you get off a pavement and get onto a track or a trail or whatever. You get much more kind of more smiley faces and things like that. But no, I don't know if we have. Maybe that's definitely something we should think about doing, the kind of the encouragement of other runners. Yeah.
Any other tips for activating women?
It's so hard, actually. I think one thing I was talking about recently, it was on another chat I was having, was the word sport. And I think that for lots of us who had crappy experiences at school, and I think also because so many women runners get into running when they're kind of, you know, 40 plus, and it's kind of post kids, you know, try it out, it's free. You know, there's no gym membership. It's like, right, what can I do? So lots of women get in at that age. And so I feel like I can speak to quite a few women who might have had similar experiences to me in terms of our school, because I know that school PE now is not the same as it was for me in the kind of late 70s and early 80s. But I think, I still think it's still there. I still think that there is an emphasis on competitive sport and who can go fastest and who can jump highest and that sort of thing. And my experiences of sport at school were awful. I was wheezy. I was massive, very, very tall, very Miranda Hart like, so kind of quite looming and always kind of pushed into goal defense. And you know, there just wasn't, and I was not good. I was not good, and I didn't enjoy it. And the things I liked doing were running and swimming, but I didn't like running in races because I didn't like the competitive thing, because it would get me too stressed and too anxious. And I think in terms of encouraging like all women to run, I feel like there's that we need to reclaim that word sport and talk about it in a kind of, in a movement kind of way. And I think about this when I was talking to my kids, because kids obviously is for me, this is also another passion point for me, because I know that girls drop off and drop out of sport in their early teens, and which is terrifying, because I have a daughter who hasn't done that yet, but that's because she's 8. So she's still thrilled by moving her body in whatever way she wants to do that. But I do have a son who is disinterested in what he thinks of as sport. But when I speak to him and say, well, what did you do today? He said, oh, we had a great time. We played capture the flag and we played this. So he loves games, but he doesn't like team sport. So I feel like we need to compartmentalize that and put it to one side and say, right, some people really enjoy this. That's fine. You guys, you can enjoy netball and football and team sport and all of that. And that's brilliant and well done you. But there are a load of us over here that are horrified by ever having to do something as a team because we know that we're going to let the side down. So we'd rather do something on our own, or at least shoulder to shoulder with people going in the moving in the same direction. And I feel like one way we can encourage more women to run is to say, just it's about how you feel. It's to kind of encourage them to try it, to realize how brilliant it is for your legs, for your heart, but like for your mind as well, and how amazing you will feel when you get back home. And for many of us, running is a deeply unpleasant activity. It's like, it really hurts, and it hurts all these bits of our bodies, and we have niggles and injuries, and our lungs hurt, and it really not very nice. But the minute we come back home, it's like the best thing we've ever done. It's the best on that day, at least. And to try and parcel up that feeling and encourage more women to kind of just access it just a little bit. That's what I feel like we need to do, but I don't have to do that.
It's a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
And thinking about through communicating with women through the media, you've touched on it earlier, but fails. What doesn't work, or what hasn't worked, or what should we avoid?
So you did ask me earlier if so I just for full disclosure, I was given some of these questions beforehand, and I did think about the fails, and it was the fails were the thing that I was just going, well, no, I don't know how I can answer this. And I felt like I was going to a job interview. I was going, well, I'm too much of a perfectionist, and but then suddenly I remembered two terrible moments, and one was actually in the first issue of the magazine when I took over the magazine. So and we have a Q&A section at the back, which is compiled by Lisa Jackson, and this is not, I'm not passing blame at all. This is firmly at my door here. So there was a question that was made up, as many Q&As are, and the question was about running and menopause, and the answer was provided by a male doctor who we no longer use. And he wrote an answer about running and menopause where he suggested that the writer, fictional or otherwise, should take some antidepressants. And he didn't mention HRT at all. And I remember reading it maybe 3 times, because that's what you do when you're editing a magazine. And I remember thinking, well, he's a doctor, and I am, as you'll know, I am in awe of medics and doctors, and I always do what I'm told. So if I'm told to take my antibiotics for 7 days, I take my antibiotics for 7 days. So I just read this thing from a doctor and just went, well, it's true, that's right. And it wasn't until we got a strongly worded email, a week after publications, going, in fact, I don't even think it was that strongly worded. It was very polite, just sort of saying, there are some other things that women can do. And I just thought, oh, I'm such a cretin. So but in a way, it taught me to question, and to not take as read everything that the experts will write for us, or that I even read for my own personal development. And we had another one more recently, which I think was funnier, where we had a question about buggy running. And so that, again, this is in exactly the same space. So it was I think it was a made-up question, and it was a brilliant answer. So there was nothing wrong with the answer. I was talking about running with your baby. And unfortunately, the image that we chose was a picture of a woman gaily running along a towpath, I think, with a bassinet buggy, so the kind of thing that you put a newborn in. So if you can imagine trying to run with that, the baby would be bouncing up and down like a beach ball, wouldn't they, in that buggy?
Yeah.
Not strapped in, and it was the wrong. Everything about it was wrong. And we got a lot of letters, quite rightly, because no woman should be running, no person should be running with a bassinet bike, with a baby that's under 6 months, A, B, in a buggy with no visible straps, C, not that buggy, and yeah, it was all wrong. So yes, big learn.
It does show though, doesn't it? It's the detail, but it also shows how much your readers are paying attention to what you publish as well. So
yeah.
It's a tricky job being an editor.
it is, when you're trying to go fast and you're working with a very small team who are just sort of so I'd be probably working with an art ed who's just like, I need a picture of a woman in a buggy running, right, that'll do, edit it so quickly, so you just sort of you're working a million miles an hour, and mistakes happen, unfortunately.
They do happen. So in the bigger picture of things, what do you hope to achieve in your role while you're at Women's Running? It does sound like a job interview question, doesn't it? Sorry, I just want to sort of get a feel for what your ambition is, and I can see what drives you, and I'm just wondering what your goals are.
I think I've probably touched on them. I think I feel like there are other brands out there who can help women run more sort of professionally, more in a more sort of athletic kind of capacity. I feel like within Women's Running, I feel like where we have work to do is with recreational runners. And I feel like what I would love to do is a lot of the stuff that I was touching on earlier, actually, it's because broadly, it's that encouragement. It's to encourage women who didn't think it was for them to give it a go. And to encourage women like me to think, you don't have to be running marathons, you don't have to be running ultra marathons, but a 5K run with a friend can be one of the most joyful things in your life. And to try and get as many women as possible to experience that, and to realize that the benefits aren't to do with losing weight or changing in any way how you look, but the benefits, the physical benefits in terms of kind of like bone health, and strength, particularly at like my age, frankly, and beyond, that you've got those, kind of the things that you can't really see going on inside, those sorts of benefits, but then the kind of the mental health benefits are just so enormous. And I feel like what I want us to do is to just kind of basically speak to a few more people. That's all. It's just kind of, if we can just gather together more women who are all sorts of ages, all sorts of sizes, all sorts of races, all sorts of abilities, and just maybe get them to think, well, okay, maybe I'll try Couch to 5K. And I think if we can do that, if we can just encourage a few more people to move and enjoy the movement, then I'd feel job done.
Yeah, hear to that, definitely. And in terms of women's running more widely, what do you think we should be aiming for?
That, I think, is stretching the boundaries of that echo chamber. That's the big thing. It's there are, running is so undiverse, and while we can sort of sit there and think, well, it's an easy thing to do, it's cheap, you only need kind of a pair of trainers and then you can just do it forever. It's not. It's a real privilege to be able to run. And there are many women that are unable to, for many, many reasons, and lots of reasons that are completely beyond their control. So I feel like for women, for us, for the women we speak to, I'd like to at least have conversations with women to at least broaden our understanding of women's circumstances globally, to try and make all of our audience more encouraging you know, it's kind of, it's like member get member, and that's what I mean, is as much as I want to encourage the people that engage with us to run, I would love them to then in turn do what they can to increase diversity on start lines, to encourage their neighbour to go for a run, to chat to their daughter about maybe doing a bit of yoga instead of sitting in front of the TV, or, you know, those sorts of things. It's just spreading out slowly, that's all. Yeah,
definitely. Lots to do, like you say.
Lots to do.
But I think we all have a role to play, don't we? I mean, like you say, it isn't just the media, it's what we learn from the media, and we can then go and reach out to women around us.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just would like to finish, Esther, just by asking you one quick question, because I know that recently you met Catherine Switzer, who is our founder of 261 Fearless, and I just wondered what that meant to you and how that went.
Okay, well, I didn't faint, but I did get really sweaty. I got nerve sweaty because she's been such an enormous hero of mine, but so felt like such a distant hero, because the photograph that I always see of her is black and white, and then it was one of those things where, because I had an email from her husband, Roger, and he was emailing me about a book, and so when I first got the email from him, I remember reading it and just sort of thinking, I'll read that later, and then literally going away, making a cup of tea, going, hang on a minute, I recognise that name. And then went back and read it again and went, oh, anyway, that all turned out to be, you know, we met for this coffee, and it was, oh God, it was unbelievable. And you know, I think the thing that got me was how lovely both of them are. And I know people can just be lovely, but my God, they're so lovely. And she was just so complimentary about women's running, which made me fall off my chair, basically. I was like, don't say nice things about me. That's you know, what about you? She was so lovely. And you know, that whole thing about don't meet your heroes, well, that does not ring true. Absolutely, meet your heroes, because it was amazing. It was just the most incredible experience, and she's lovely, and he was lovely, and she bought me coffee.
No.
I was just like, oh God. Yeah, it was incredible. I'm a bit kind of, a bit speechless about it, to be honest.
Well, I think it's amazing to see how far women's running has come since that black and white picture in 1967, you know, more than 50 years later, how far we have come. But like you say, and Catherine is still working, you know, to try and make running more accessible to women, but we still have so much more to do. And you know, I'm very grateful for all that you do and women's running does to reach out to women and try and get them to take part in this wonderful activity, not just once, but to keep doing it. And, you know, really grateful for your support of 261 Fearless as well. And thank you so much for meeting and speaking with us today. It's been really, really interesting.
Oh, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for asking really nice questions and bearing with me.
Oh, I'm sorry for the job interview. Thanks, Esther. We'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Juliet. Bye-bye.